of the failure of leadership behind the door.
He had no idea what he was doing.
If this is the standard of our leaders today, we're in trouble.
So, what kind of leader are you aiming to be?
Holy mackerel, how'd you do that?
Good leaders remember they are people first.
Leadership is hard.
Let me name those three things in a succinct way now.
We're taking leadership to a better place. Thank you for being with us on the Leadership Listening podcast.
To be an effective CEO, you need to be a generalist. You might argue with me about this, Lawrie, but I think for me, that's the best way to approach it. But I do think being a producer is a really, really good way into being a CEO. My experience, although less traditional, probably sets you up much better for being a CEO than a lot of other people because you have so many skills that you can use.
Today's episode of Leadership Listening is with Chloe Straw, who is the Chief Executive of Audio UK. And as we launched Leadership Listening as a podcast in the middle of June this year, I thought one of the things I ought to do is scout around the world of podcasting. And of course, I discovered not only Audio UK, but also Chloe. And I think Chloe's story, which you're going to hear now, is a wonderful example of how a chief executive can have, if I may say so, very non-classic beginnings, a journey towards being a CEO, which is very difficult to guess from its early beginnings. But as you'll see in the latter part of the podcast, you'll see an episode which demonstrates really strong tenets of being a very effective CEO in the communications industry. So let's enjoy the episode with Chloe Straw. They do say that youngsters quite often have sort of leadership traits, whether it's in the Brownies or the Girl Guides or something else, sporting attainments or whatever. But what's the story behind Chloe?
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't think I had any leadership aspirations when I was younger at all. I'm trying to think, but I didn't do the Brownies or the Girl Guides or anything like that. I wasn't a prefect at school. None of those things. I don't think I specifically focused on being a leader. I think when I was younger, I was really into science and maths when I was at school, which I notice in my, as I sort of become acquainted with other people in CEO level positions, there seems to be quite a progression of people doing science and maths as a degree and then going on to be CEOs. So maybe for a future episode, it's something to look into, whether if there's a kind of correlation between CEO traits and science and maths. But no, I was a good student, but probably went slightly off the rails when I was a teenager. So in some ways, it's probably amazing that I've made it here at all. As I say, didn't really have leadership ambitions. I think the only thing that I knew I wanted to do was that one of my parents worked in media and the other one worked in, as you know, business and consultancy. And the main thing that I thought when I grew up was I didn't want to work in either media or consultancy. And so, of course, I find myself working in media in a CEO position. So obviously had some sort of influence from my parents without meaning to. So, early life was sort of as it is for most people, I guess. Did relatively well at school, messed up my A-levels because a variety of reasons, probably went out too much, had to retake them, and then ended up at the University of Bristol where I wanted to study, or I did study physics and philosophy as a double major, which was great. It's sort of a wonderful university, really great course. But I primarily went there because I was really into music and Bristol has an amazing music scene. So I'm not sure how other people choose universities, but mine was dual kind of wanting to live in that city and also being really interested in the kind of physics and philosophy as subjects.
And why those two subjects? They're very sort of a bit unusual, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I was always ambitious. So not necessarily towards leadership, but ambitious in terms of what I studied and my interests, and so I had a real I loved physics. I can't tell you how much I love physics, which seems bizarre because most people hate it, but I think it's just fascinating, like what a satisfying subject to study. It's so logical, and what makes the world go round. But I think I was quite conscious. I've always been, I don't want to say a bit of a rebel, it's a bit cheesy, but you can probably, I have that in my blood. And so I think part of me was like, oh, I don't want to do just physics, that's boring. So what else can I do? And obviously philosophy and physics have, a lot in common in terms of how they look at the world or the way they examine the world. So I think that was why. But I also think that I liked going out a lot. And I think that if you do a double major, it's a lot of work. You don't get half of the thing that I kind of thought was that they bring it together as as one degree, but actually you got 3/4 of a physics degree and 3/4 of a philosophy degree, and there was no crossover. You just got to do all the extra work. And I think, in fact, there was a philosophy of science module. That was the only module there was that had any form of crossover whatsoever. And I thought it was too boring, so I did aesthetics instead. So, so like
Good
the
stuff.
philosophy of art, yeah.
And what was the entry then to the world of work? How did that present itself?
So when I was at university, as I say, I went for the music, and they had the kind of good old student radio station, I guess, called Burst. So I used to do that with two of my friends. We had a friend called Mike who was a DJ. He used to DJ kind of reggae and dancehall. And then my friend Susie, who is now the head of international at Apple Podcasts, so she's fantastic, used to come along, and we'd kind of produce the show. So we'd press all the buttons. But Susie used to work as a receptionist in a sunbed shop, so we got into this hysterical kind of thing that we do. So I can't remember when we recorded the show, but once a week I'd go to visit her at work and have a sunbed, which I'm horrified by now. Obviously, in the middle of Bristol in winter, I'd go and have a sunbed, and then we'd go and produce this radio show with our friend Mike, and that was what we did. So it was quite a fun university
Marvellous.
time. But yeah, I did that, graduated from Bristol, and then the classic kind of young people, what do I do now?
Yep.
And so then took the slightly weird route of doing a DJ and dance music production course at Lewisham College, because I lived in London, so I was able to do that. At the same time, used to work in a pub and work in a clothes shop to pay the rent, so to kind of keep myself going. So I did that, and then became kind of obsessed with radio and music. Was totally obsessed with getting a job at the BBC, as many people were those days. And there was a station called One Extra, which had launched recently as kind of, not recently now, recently then, as a sister station to Radio 1. And I loved the music there. So I became totally focused on getting a job there. So one of the things that I am good at is to really focus on what I want and do sort of everything to get there. But it's not that easy to get a job at the BBC, or it certainly wasn't then. It was kind of one of the only places that kind of employed people in radio.
And why was it difficult? Interesting thought. Difficult to get into the
Yeah,
BBC.
I think I'm very specific about what I want. So I really wanted a job at One Extra. If someone said, oh, do you want a job at Radio 2? I probably would have gone, no, I don't actually. So I think I make it less easy. In some ways it's good because I'm really hyper-focused on one thing, but in some ways my partner always says this, make it harder for myself because I won't take the other thing that might help. But the BBC at the time, I don't know if they still do it now, but they had very specific recruitment. So a lot of the recruitment was done internally. So unless you were in there already, you couldn't get a job there. So I don't know how anyone got in the first place. It's confusing. But I did a lot of freelance work there. At the same time, worked in a DJ agency as well. Also worked for independent record label and for Ministry of Sound. So did all of these different jobs, just kind of, again, I think I'm very good at doing everything to get what I want. So it's like, okay, I can't get that now. But that was very much like I'd work in the daytime at the agency, and then I'd go and do a night shift as a freelancer at One Extra. So that went on for some time. And then thankfully, I finally got a job with a company called Something Else, who at the time were one of the only independent kind of audio production businesses out there. So this will sound very strange to everyone who's listening now, because there's so many different businesses that make podcasts and audio. But I think we're looking back not quite 20 years. And at the time, the only kind of independent businesses that existed mainly made a small amount of content for the BBC, which was commissioned, or we used to do odd things like internationally syndicated music shows, or radio shows that you could listen to when you're on British Airways and things like that. So it's a very different world to now. But I got a job there as a broadcast assistant, and that was kind of the start of everything.
Great stuff. And then was Audio UK the next stop?
It was not, Lawrie. As ever, I like to make things not complicated, but, which is part of the charm, I think. So I'm trying to do this without it becoming incredibly boring. I was a broadcast assistant. One of the beautiful things about independent production companies is you can move really, really quickly, because they're basically startups, and they are moving and growing at a really, really fast rate. So if you work in a big corporate, it can be harder to move around. But when you work in a kind of independent startup, it's fantastic. So because it was growing so quickly, it meant that I moved really fast from being a broadcast assistant to a producer to a senior producer. And those are basically the people that make the programs. I think what's really good about producers is that you get all of these incredible skills that you can use for the rest of your life. So, you're effectively a team leader, you're doing recruitment, you're doing HR, you're doing firing, you're doing organisational structure, you're doing operations, you're doing efficiency. And that's before you even get to, script writing, editorial compliance, talent management, all of those things. And I was good at that. And what happens, particularly in the creative industries, when you're good at something, is you get you sort of hysterically stop doing the creative stuff and start doing the management stuff. But the management stuff was something that I really enjoyed. So from Something Else, I went freelance for a bit. I have what I like to call a 4-year itch a lot of the time with the businesses I work for. So after 4 years, I often want to move on, feel like I've kind of done what I can do. So I went freelance for a bit, and then actually got offered a job back at Something Else, which quite a few people did, which was funny. So I went back in as a executive producer and led a department of about 30 people, delivering content primarily to the BBC, but also to other brands such as Red Bull and Spotify. So that was good. And from there, I went to be the head of content at a business called We Are Grape, similar production business, but that was a new role. So that was very much about setting up that role, helping to, set up the kind of podcast side of that business, and to grow that business and lead that team. So that was great. And then from there, I went to, again, I got the 4-year itch, and then I went to Audio UK. And part of that was, I really enjoyed the business side.
And one of the things I often think about becoming a CEO is that people have largely been functional. Been a CFO or, down the finance line before that, or maybe whatever. In your case, there was a sort of torrent of being a generalist.
Yeah.
And how then does that play into when you sit at the top of the pile as the CEO of something like Audio UK?
I mean, I think it's probably the best way that you can approach being a CEO, because actually to be an effective CEO, you need to be a generalist. You might argue with me about this, Lawrie, but I think for me, that's the best way to approach it. I sort of laugh, but I do think being a producer is a really, really good way into being a CEO, because at a much smaller level, you have, as I said, budget responsibility, HR responsibility, organisational responsibility, but you're also, a lot of my previous experience was around pitching for new business. So I also had that strategic responsibility and strategic oversight. So I think in many ways, you don't necessarily have the sort of, I've really specifically looked at finance, or I've really specifically done an MBA, But I think actually my experience, although less traditional, probably sets you up much better for being a CEO than a lot of other people, because you have so many skills that you can use.
Hmm. And are there particular leadership stresses then in the creative industries? I mean, I'm outside of that, other than doing this podcast. Um, but I think some people would say, well, you're surrounded by people who are, geniuses at one thing or another. They're very artistic. Um, some people call them lovies and so on. I mean, I don't know. What do you, as the CEO, say about those kind of things?
I think, what do I think? So first of all, I have to say that so we're a member funded business. We have other commercial revenue streams as well, but we exist to, support, promote our members, help grow the industry. The members that I work with are all fantastic, and they all run their businesses really well. So I just have to say that as a slight disclaimer. Having said that, I think what happens in the creative industries is you're a really good creative. So you're good at making programs or developing ideas. And the sort of next natural progression step is into management or founding your own company. And I think that just because you're a good creative doesn't mean you will be a good manager or a good founder. I think often creatives are good founders up to a point. I think they have incredible vision, incredible drive. But I think there comes a stage as businesses grow where they kind of need the, what do we call it? The engine, the kind of organisational and operational engine, which is very much the kind of supporting piece. So I don't know if that's how you find other industries as well, but I'm not sure that skills such as creativity necessarily translate into good management.
And there's lots of things, components, roles within being the role of a CEO. What are the bits? And you said you love them all, but I don't know whether that's statistically possible. What are the bits you love, and what are the bits you perhaps don't like so much?
That's a really good question. What do I love? I mean, I love strategy. People look at me like I'm totally mad when I say I love strategy, but I think that has got something perhaps to do with my background in science. Like, strategy is, you get to be kind of inspirational at the start of it, and then just hugely logical in terms of how you deliver it. Which really fits in with, the way that I like to approach the world. I enjoy the kind of people and operational side of it, just because they're so important. I'm lucky enough to have built an incredible team at Audio UK. One of the greatest joys of my job is working with them. They are, really highly intelligent people who have incredible delivery capabilities. And I think one of the things that I get the most satisfaction is that we've put the structure in and we've got the strategy to ensure that they all are empowered and have the autonomy to do their jobs incredibly well. And I find it really satisfying to see how great they are and how well they deliver. And I think for a team of our size, our output, I've just written the annual report for our AGM, and our output is absolutely incredible. It's kind of the output that you could see from a team that's kind of 5 to 10 times the size of ours. So I enjoy the kind of people and the delivery. That's what makes an organisation. I enjoy the public facing part of it. Do I enjoy it? I sort of enjoy it. I sort of hate it and sort of enjoy it. I think that I've had to learn to enjoy it. I prefer chairing things, if I'm honest, from being
Interesting.
the centre of attention. But I like the public part, and I also think it's really necessary. One of the things at Audio UK is very much about, we needed to grow our membership base, which we've done very successfully. We needed to grow awareness of the organisation, and a lot of that has to be done by me. So I'm kind of happy to do it. What bits do I not like? I don't know, Lawrie. Maybe people complaining, but then I quite enjoy sort of getting back to those complaints. So even the complaining I like.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get much complaining either. So
Yeah. Strategy is certainly an interesting subject because lots of places I've been, the word is strategies for clever people. And once, of course, the strategy is there, in some organizations, it's sort of locked away in a drawer and not communicated to the organization. And and the thesis then is that a miracle occurs, and well, implementation, ex- carrying it out is just for ordinary people.
Oh, funny.
But I, but
You just have to write it and it will happen. Is that right,
yes,
Lawrie? It's
it's
not my
it's like a
experience.
magic trick. But I often find that actually the implementation is the really difficult bit. In a sense, more difficult than the think piece that is strategy. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I mean, if I think as well, going back to sort of creatives and so on, in some ways, the strategy is the exciting part, isn't it? Because it's the visualization and the, thinking about what it looks like. But the perseverance and the legwork needs to come from the delivery. And I think it's very much about the visualization of the strategy, the communication of that strategy towards the wider, particularly as your business grows, it's so key that you have a really clear way of communicating that strategy to your team. And that's whether your team is 50 people or, 500 people or 5,000 people. And as we know, that comes hand in hand with the values. So the strategy and the values. And then I think from there, it's very much about it's the checking in and the measurement, isn't it? So as you say, it's not just about writing something and popping it in a drawer. You have the writing, and then you have the communication, and then you have the measurement, and then you have the reports. And, that all then is a circle that feeds all back into the strategy, isn't it? So it's a living, breathing thing. It's not just a bit of paper in a drawer. But that's satisfying because, you can measure your success.
And in this day and age, because everything is moving so quickly, our advice to clients is revisit the subject every 6 months, big time, spend some
Yeah.
time on it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
ask yourself, are we on track with strategy? If
yeah,
not, why not? What can we
yeah.
learn from that? And by the way, is it still the right strategy? Because things are
Yes.
moving so quickly these days. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So we do a lot of that Audio UK, and I'm fortunate enough to have a fantastic board as well. We're again currently, because it's AGM time, we've got board elections coming up, which is exciting. But I think because of the cadence of our board meetings, and I would do it anyway, we check in every quarter with the board. So obviously when I report to the board, we very much go through, in terms of setting the strategy, I do that with the board on an away day. And then we go back through and I will talk about what we've hit, what we've not hit, where we're at with it all. But the key point that you make there, which is key for me, is the constant adjustment. Particularly the creative industries, podcasting moves so fast that something that might have been relevant, even a month ago in some ways is not relevant. We tend to break our strategy down quite a lot as well. So we have kind of the headlines and then the kind of key objectives, and more often than not, the headlines stay the same for the year, but the key objectives change quite a lot. I think that's really important for us. And I think for me as well, I just find strategy incredibly useful. I kind of call it our guiding light. So for me and the team, in every decision that we make, no matter how big or small, it will always be with that strategy in mind. And I think that genuinely makes my job easier, if I'm honest, to be able to think about what we've said.
Yeah. And I often think, and perhaps always think, that the relationship between a chair and the CEO is one of the absolute vital ones in an organization. And as a CEO, what do you want out of that relationship that suits you and your role?
Yeah, so I work best when I'm given quite a lot of autonomy. And that is just something that I know about myself. So it's not going to change. I know that I'm, the best leader when I am left to get on with things. I drive things very hard. That doesn't mean I don't want to communicate that to anyone, but it means I want to be, able to have that autonomy and to take decisions. So I'm very lucky with my chair, who's actually about to step down after 6 years, the senior team. and the board that I have an enormous amount of autonomy to run the organisation as I think it should be run. So the way that it tends to work for us is I will do the work either around strategy or other decisions, and then present that to the board with my recommendations around why I think that should work. And I don't think they're, maybe once or twice, but generally, because we have a really good trusting relationship, they're always behind me and they will always sign it off. They might, I'm trying to think if there's occasions when they haven't done that, but generally not. They will challenge me, they will challenge us, and that's fantastic because that's what they're there for, is, you know, the governance piece and to challenge us. But much of the growth and the movement and the drive of the organisation is driven by me, and I feel very lucky. So specifically with my current chair, she's called Kelly Weil. She is just a very good sounding board. So I think in terms of kind of the public face of the organisation, often that can be done by the chair. But for Audio UK, it worked best if it's me. But Kelly is very good if there's, you know, a decision I want to talk through and I need an extra pair of ears. If there's something that I want her to come along to represent Audio UK, then she's very good with that. And I think our board is interesting because a lot of the businesses in my world are SMEs, small to medium enterprises. So anywhere from, you know, one person to 200 people. They're not that big. But because of that, a lot of the driving is still done by their CEOs or their founders. So actually, in terms of their time, they don't have a huge amount of time. So I think, you know, I always say to the board, they have kind of the 4 board meetings a year and the AGM. And for the majority of them, that's what they come to. And, you know, they get presented with everything they need to know. And then we kind of move on from there. But I'm very conscious that they do not have much time. And I think what's really nice is that we have such a great relationship that they trust me to just, you know, get on with it, make the right decisions. If there's something I need extra input into, I'll take it to them.
A very significant subject of our time is artificial intelligence technology generally, and the impact that that has on your kind of sector generally, and then as a CEO, the organisation in particular. And any thoughts that illuminate that pathway?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's fascinating. I'm trying to think of. It's a very volatile subject, I would say, within a lot of the creative industries. So, one of the quotes that really stuck with me about AI is, "It's not AI that will take your job; it's someone who knows how to use AI who will." And I think that that has always been quite a guiding principle around how we try to approach AI as an organisation. So it is not about saying you need to be using AI. AI is really important. Why aren't you using AI? But it's about providing people with enough information about the tools that are out there to make decisions as to how they want to use it. And I think it is tricky because I think there are people who are really into AI, understand that they want to use it as a tool to, you know, increase business efficiency or increase production process efficiency. You know, there's even in audio and podcasting, there's AI for everything. But then, of course, a lot of the people that I work with are producers, and they are worried that their livelihoods will disappear because AI is suddenly going to do all their sort of editing for them. So it's, as with any membership organisation, it's balancing those different opinions. Some people are horrified, some people think it's great. It's, you know, as it is everywhere. I think from our point of view, the one thing that it is that it's coming. So we need to give people the support and the information to decide how they use it for themselves. So I think that's really key. So, you know, we have... we provide support for our members. There's like an AI usage template, things like that. We're looking to do collaboration with Acast around AI and audio and podcasting, just so people can really understand how they can use it and decide if they want to. I think in some ways, if it's used right, it's the same as using. I'll probably get struck down for saying this, but Google for a web search. A lot of people just use ChatGPT now. So, but it is about how you use those tools. And then on the other side, we're a slightly we sit in the middle a bit. Obviously, if you're a narrator, we have some audiobook producers who also narrate who are members, but if you're a narrator, then AI can be really worrying because there's a lot of AI narration out there. So they have Equity, who are their union, who are doing a lot of work around that. And there's various different ways in which it sort of becomes a threat. So we keep on top of it. I'm part of the Creative Industries Council IP subgroup, which looks at the use of AI and exploitation of intellectual property. And, we fed into the government consultation around copyright and AI earlier this year. So I think it's just, as with any membership organisation, it's understanding that there will be lots of different perspectives on it and sort of honouring those, but also trying to give people the information and the tools so that when and if they decide to use it, they know what to do.
Got it. The media is full these days of people who say, what we want is leadership.
Right.
So there's an interesting sort of backdrop in all sorts of dimensions. So when I say the word leader to you, who comes to mind?
I think you pre-warned me of this one, Lawrie, but I've somehow forgotten. So I think the leader that comes to mind, and I'm actually never quite sure how to pronounce her surname properly, but is Alex Mahon, who's the outgoing CEO of Channel 4. I think she left a couple of months ago. I believe a fellow physics and maths or similar graduate, so it's obviously the way to go, particularly if you're a woman for some reason. And she did an incredible, I think I'm going to backtrack a bit. My experience in not just the creative industries, but in leadership as a whole, you can either be a totally commercially driven leader who only, looks at the bottom line, looks at profit, doesn't really think about your people. Or you can be a leader who thinks about equity, diversity, and inclusion, think about the culture of your business, and think about the people. And the amazing thing about Alex was she was very, very outspoken about EDI, about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And she was also an incredible commercial leader in terms of the repositioning of Channel 4 to a much more digital space. And I think that she embodies, for me, the combination of looking after your people and making sure that you're really making change within the industry as a whole, within leadership, within senior leadership positions, but also being really commercially successful. And I think in an ideal world, that is how all organisations would be built and driven for me. I think another really good example is, and forgive me because I forget her name, but the woman who came up with the idea for Canva, which is the editing sort of Photoshop but easier. I can't design kind of software. I think I can't remember their valuation, but it's absolutely huge. Very much in the billions. And again, the story around her, I don't know. I'm not as intricately acquainted with her leadership, but very, very commercially successful, but also very much about valuing her employees, rewarding those employees. I think a lot of them just got, a $3 million payout, and really making sure that the company is built on a really good culture. And I think often people are starting to realise that if you have good culture and good values, that enhances your commercial success and doesn't pull it back. Whereas I think in the past, people have thought, oh, we have to keep driving forwards. We can't think about looking after our employees or spending time there. But I think it's, it's much more obvious now that the two can go hand in hand.
And I must say, I've lost track, just to follow your theme, of the number of organisations I've been into when I've talked to the leaders, the board members, or the C-suite executive team. And amongst other things, I ask them, have you got values? And they say, oh, yes, we've got values. And I say, what are they?
Where?
And they struggle. And that happens all the time. So I think it's all very well to actually say the words, but there's a big, big premium on meaning them, understanding them, and delivering them, and driving all your people processes through the lens of your culture.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they're as important as strategy, aren't they? So you effectively have your, your business purpose and the values and the behaviours that sit underneath that, and then you have your goal and the strategy and the kind of OKRs or KPIs that sit under that. And a lot of the time, you see the strategy and the kind of statistics around that, but you don't see the other side of it. And I think unless you have both sides, it's just not balanced, is it? So I think it's really important. And yeah, I think Alex embodies both sides of that sort of delivery.
Yeah. And there is that famous saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is worth thinking about.
Good one, yeah.
As we come towards the end of our conversation, I'm kind of interested if there are one or two bits of advice you'd give to leaders who are out there today who will be listening and watching the Leadership Listening podcast. What are the things that Chloe would bring to the party that are just things that there need to be more of and you do not need to forget?
That's a tricky one. Let me think. I think the big... I'm going to give a few, Lawrie. So the first one is trust your teams. So one of the things that I see, I think what's I am lucky enough to have done is I have worked in a lot of fast-growing startup businesses, but I have also worked not quite on, but with as clients, huge businesses, the BBC, Spotify, Acast. I've seen how businesses with thousands of people work. And then I've seen how businesses that have gone from, 4 to 4,000 people work. And when those businesses work, it is because they trust their teams. But there's so much more around it than that. And I think you need to make sure that you are empowering your teams to give them autonomy so that they're really good at their jobs and you can trust them. But I think in order to make sure that they're operating well with that autonomy, you need to make sure that the structures, everything we've been talking about, the communication is in place so they know what they're doing, they know how they should be doing it. But I think once you have that, it's quite a freedom being able to trust people to do what they're doing, and it means the organisation is a lot more efficient. So I think that's really important. So I don't necessarily speak that much about being a woman, but the statistics speak, and there still aren't that many women in leadership positions for a number of reasons, which are, a lot historical. But similarly, I'd say, trust women. I think the stats very much speak for themselves, that if you have a woman on your C-suite team, not only is your business statistically shown to be successful for a longer amount of time, but it's also shown to have higher profit growth. So if there's ever, has to be the right person, but I think it would be remiss of me not to push the, work with women agenda, because I think there needs to be more of us, as a section of the population, and we're good leaders. I think that's it, really. What have I missed, Lawrie? You can...
I don't think you've missed very much. I like the idea that the CEO needs to be thoroughly conscious of the responsibility to create the organization to do the work. And I sometimes think, especially when we come into contact with great big transformation projects, that the CEO has lost focus with that notion of creating the organization to do the work. The organization has therefore gone out of focus and now needs a very expensive transformation process. So expensive, distracting, worrying to staff, takes you away from business as usual. I'd say be very conscious, especially as you're supposed to be a generalist, that you're there to create the organization to do the work. And you need to keep your eye on that on a much more regular basis these days, because everything's moving so fast.
I think you're right. Also, you don't want too many leaders to be good at that, Lawrie, so you'd not have any work. So maybe just a few more. But I think that, I think as well as a leader, don't be afraid to let go. And maybe that goes into the trust. So you need to create the organisation where you can trust your teams and your workflows and your processes. But actually, I see this a lot with organisations that grow quickly. The skills you need as a leader when your team is 3 people versus the skills you need as a leader when your team is 300, where you might actually not know some of the people in your company, are very, very different. And I think it can be quite tricky. I think you can get your organisation to a certain size, but then moving beyond that can be quite hard because you have to start to accept that you're not going to be able to have your finger in every single pie. And I think that must be quite a weird feeling, it's kind of your baby. But I think you need to, have that leadership to work with those people so that you have that you're empowered and you can trust enough to kind of step back and know that you can't be on top of absolutely everything, but you know that your business is going to run well still. So I think that's important too.
Chloe, we've had a marvelous conversation across the leadership scene. Thank you for that. And one thing before you leave us is to tell us 2 things. 1, your pet hate, and 2, your secret passion. And I bet you've got both.
Yeah, my pet hate. I clearly thought more about this than the tips that I should give to other leaders. So I'm not quite sure what that says about me, Lawrie. And my pet hate sounds really pedantic, but I thought, should I say this or should I come out with something that is less honest? But I always generally applauded for my honesty. So I thought, why not? So I hate it when people tell me things that I know already, particularly when it's people who I think know less than me, so they shouldn't be telling me stuff at all, which sounds terrible, but it does happen quite a lot, believe it or not. And my poor partner has to put up with it because I'll ask him something and he loves to go into detail about stuff and I'll go, no, I don't want the detail. I know all that already. I just want to know the top line. So yeah, I have it's sort of a secret pet hate that I don't normally let out there, but you couldn't, if you want to really enrage me, not that you ever would, Lawrie, if someone wants to really enrage me, just tell me something patently obvious that I know already, and then I'll say thank you through gritted teeth and then scream into a pillow.
I'm amazed that I've survived so far with you, Chloe, but come on, secret passion.
Secret passion, I mean, there's loads, but probably ironically reading for me. So obviously I'm in media, love podcasts, love watching telly, films, but I have read non-stop since I was a child, primarily because I can't actually go to sleep unless I read before I go to sleep. It sort of relaxes me. But I just absolutely love reading. And I think because a lot of my brain activity is writing or listening or having conversations, reading is just totally different and a total switch off for me. So I went on holiday over summer and it was the first time the kids could kind of play in the pool without drowning. So I managed to get through a lot of books then. And the one that I'd really recommend is one called Father Figure. I can't remember the author, but I'm sure it's easily findable. And because it was just totally unexpected, you know, from the title, you can have quite a perception of what the book might be about, and even from the blurb, but then you get into it. And my first reaction was like, this is very weird, and almost like I really didn't like it and wanted to put it down. But then the story is so well told and the characterization is incredible. The characters, you don't really like any of them, but they're all brilliantly well done. And the story continues in a way that you could never expect. So it's a sort of remarkable book and I'd recommend it to everyone.
Terrific. Well, as I say, we've had a terrific tour across the subject. So, Chloe, on behalf of viewers and listeners to Leadership Listening, many thanks for everything this morning. And of course, if viewers and listeners have got things to say about what we've talked about this morning, then you can email us at podcast@leadership.listening.com. So, Chloe, many thanks and good luck with Audio UK in everything you do. Many thanks.
Thank you for having me, Lawrie. Thank you.